Welcome everybody. In this video, we are going to talk about if statements. And an if statement is a statement you use to conditionally execute a little piece of code logic. So what does that mean? Well, it looks a lot like a while loop when you type it out. So on the screen here, I've got the little program we were working on in the last video where we are prompting a user for a number that is greater than 100. I'm going to update my code to actually match what I just said. And we are telling the user what number they finally picked, and we're telling them how many times it took them to get it right. So if we wanted to do something conditionally based off of the number of times it took them to get it right, we could make an if statement. So we could say something like, if, and it looks like this, times looped is greater than 10, console.log. That's a lot of tries. So you'll notice the structure here is very similar, almost identical to the while loop. The only difference is we're saying if instead of while. And so basically, the if statement evaluates what's in these parentheses, and in this case, the evaluation means is it true or false. So if times looped is greater than 10, it will log to the console, that's a lot of tries. So let's take a look at what this looks like in action. So I'm going to go to File, Save All. I'd only changed one file, but it's a good habit to get into. It'll save you some trouble down the line. And I'm going to go to Google Chrome, and we're going to do the same thing we've been doing to execute this code, which is to open File, and then I'm going to navigate to my web development videos location. It's already there because that's what I've been opening up. And I'm going to open up index.html just like always. Okay, so remember, it is asking me for a number greater than 100, and if I do it less than 10 times, if it takes me less than 10 times to get it right, then it is just going to give me, and this is going to be 5 times. So when I go and hold down function F12, I'm going to get my JavaScript console. And it took me 6 tries to get it right. Let's see, is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so this code behaves just like it did in the previous video because it's not executing the code inside of this if statement. It is skipping it because this does not evaluate to true. So let's see what happens when it does actually take us more than 10 times. So you can see it updating on the side as I'm entering these in. We're going to enter a bunch. And finally, I get to 101. So it took me 18 tries. That's not very good. And it said that's a lot of tries down here at the end because since 18 is the value of times looped, since 18 is greater than 10, that is true. It executes what is in here. So in these if statements, we can use a number of different operators. We can say something like if times looped is less than 10. We could do something then. We could say if times looped is less than or equal to a value. We could say if times looped. You're going to guess what comes next probably. Is greater than or equal to a value. We could do something. And we could also check for equality or check for something that is not equal, but those look a little bit different than you would expect in JavaScript. So let's say we want to see if times looped is exactly equal to 10. So we're going to use the double equals. And I've got to actually close up my little curly braces here. That's why it's complaining at me. So the single equals is the assignment operator in JavaScript. You'll notice when we say up here, let user number equal 0, we're saying user number is equal to the value of the prompt, stuff like that. That assigns the value to this variable. If we want to check for equality, we have to use a double equal sign. So let's say if I do exactly 10, I'll say that's a medium number of tries. And that is only going to run if the times looped is exactly equal to 10. So I'm going to save all and try it real quick. Go back to Chrome. I've already got it loaded. I'm just going to reload it. So first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth. And on the 10th one, I'm going to get it right. And it runs this block of code because times looped is exactly equal to 10. To check for inequality, you use an exclamation point and an equal sign. So if it's not equal to 10, I could say something like, that is not 10 tries. I'm going to save it, run it again, and we'll check it with a single try, which is not 10. That is not 10 tries. That works correctly, and we'll just verify that it's doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 101. And it doesn't say that little block of code because 10 is equal to 10. So the evaluation, so the little statement 10 is not equal to 10 evaluates to false. It kind of takes a second to wrap your head around, but what's important to know is if this little thing in the parentheses evaluates to true, the code inside of here executes. If it evaluates to false, the code inside of here does not execute. So let's say we wanted to sort of grade the user on how well they had guessed. It's not really guessing, how well they had entered a number that was greater than 100. So we might have different categories, right? We might want to say, and I'm going to add something called a comment in here, which is something we haven't talked about yet. But a comment is basically a line of code that doesn't run. So comment can be used to remove lines of code from execution because we're testing or debugging or something like that. Or it can be used to describe what you're doing, which is what I'm going to do here. And you'll notice when I type in the 2 slashes, it turns green, and that lets me know that it's a comment. So 1 to 3 tries, pretty good. 4 to 6 tries, pretty okay. And more than 6 tries, pretty not great. So that is my sort of evaluation criteria for this. And in order to do this, I'm going to need something a little bit more, or I would typically use something a little bit more complicated than an if statement. So if I said something like this, if times looped, I got to put my parentheses here, is greater than 1. So we've got basically 1 to 3 tries. So it's, yeah, see, I'm trying to think through the logic here just using if statements, and I really can't do it. So let's do this. Let's say if times looped is greater than 6, so that's our last condition. Then we're going to say console.log, not print. Pretty bad. No, it's pretty not good. That's what we said. So you might think, okay, then I'm just going to check to see if it is greater than 3. Because if it's not greater than 6 and it is greater than 3, then that should be what we want. So if times looped, and you may figure out the error in this logic as I'm typing it, is greater than 3. We need to console.log. Pretty okay. However, the problem here, we're going to run this. We're not going to add the last one in. I'm going to run this to show you what the problem with this logic is. So I'm going to save all. And I am going to go to Chrome. I'm going to reload it. And let's try 4 first. 1, 2, 3, 4. So took 4 tries, pretty okay. So that's correct, right? That's what we expect to see. 4 to 6 tries, pretty okay. So let's see what happens when we try more than 6 tries. Go ahead and reload it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and on our 7th try, we get into pretty not good territory. So it does print out pretty not good because our number is greater than 6, but it also prints out pretty okay because any number that is greater than 6 is also going to be greater than 3. So we need a way of sort of only running parts of our if statement if the other ones don't happen. And so that is called an else if statement or an if else statement. So I am going to give you 2 challenges in this video. The first challenge is to write a program that evaluates the number of times it took the user to get a number greater than 100 based off of these criteria, this rubric. The second challenge is you're going to have to use the internet to figure out how an if-else statement works in JavaScript. So let me give you a couple of pieces of advice on that. Number one, start with Google. That's where I always start when I don't understand how something works in a language. And in fact, before this video, I Googled how if-elses work in JavaScript because I've mostly been writing Python lately, and I wanted to make sure I was using the correct syntax in my testing. So that's something that even more advanced programmers do. A lot of times you'll have to refresh your knowledge using Google. So a couple of places that you're going to find good answers about JavaScript. There are sites called Stack Overflow and Stack Exchange, which is where programmers ask and answer questions for each other. That's a really good resource. And there's also for JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, there's a good site called W3 Schools that has a lot of good sort of tutorials and information for beginners. Challenge with Stack Overflow and Stack Exchange is it's a lot of professionals. Sometimes people come in there asking for help with schoolwork, stuff like that. But it's a lot of professionals, so you'll frequently find answers that are a little bit too complex for what you're trying to do at this point. W3 Schools is great. But just go to Google and look for how to do if-else statements in JavaScript. So your challenge, I'll repeat that again, 2 challenges here. Challenge 1, I want you to add a little part to this program that evaluates how well the user did based off of this criteria I've got on my screen right here. And challenge 2 is you've actually got to use the internet to learn how if-else statements work. We talked about how if statements work in this video, so it's up to you to go find how if-else statements work on your own. All right, that is it for this video. Thank you very much for your attention. And like I said, if you've got any problems, have any questions, feel free to always raise your hand and we will take a look at it together.